Hey, am I live? It's impossible to tell. Okay, I'm live. Hey. Welcome back to another episode of hey. Welcome. Um we're going to do the same thing we always do, which is writing prompts. Yep. Okay. Hey. So, let me go over to writing prompts and we'll go from there. What an intro. Yay! Okay, so yesterday I had music going. I don't know if music's like what. I don't know if people like music. I'm okay. People like music. Obviously, people like music, but like I don't know if like the music I had on was actually good or not. It's impossible to tell. I guess I'll play it, and if you guys don't like it, I'll turn it off. I think that's okay. So we're gonna CD into music, stream, and then /play, and there should be something. Welcome back to another episode of Hey. Welcome. Hey. What's up, new chatter? How are you doing? Is there music? I don't think there's music. 1 second. Now? Maybe? I think it's impossible to tell. Good. I'm doing okay. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, so today we're just going to go through a bunch of writing prompts. And okay, so first of all, if you guys haven't been here before, basically I have a website. It's called amphimancer.com. www.amphimancer.com. It's right here. We've done basically 2 posts before. Both of them. Okay. Whew. Take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. Okay, so here's what happened, right? The other day I thought, hey, let's do a writing prompt challenge. And every day we're going to come in and we're going to do a writing prompt. That's what I said, right? And so I said, okay, let's do it live on stream because I don't know. I kind of like the act of communicating with people, even though I'm like incredibly socially awkward. And then I said, okay, well, let's go ahead and put it on a website and kind of do the whole like 9 yards or 9 meters or whatever it is in metric. I don't know whether that 9 yards is going to be like 3 meters in metric, but that doesn't sound as good. So 9 yards, you know what I mean? So we're going to do the whole 9 yards. And I started on Monday, basically, and we did 2 writing prompts so far. You're right. Yeah, I did the conversion wrong. 8.2296 meters. So I was going to do the whole 8.2296 meters. And yeah, that's a good thing to know. So basically, wow, I'm really butchering the intro here, but that's okay. Basically, what we did is we've written 2 stories so far. One was on March 31st, although the website URL says the 30th because I'm an idiot. And then the other one was on April 1st. Now, I got to be honest, guys. Okay? You know me, I'm as honest as they come. The past 2 stories that we did were both related to like the underworld and like demons. And, you know, if there's one thing I want out of today's stream, it's, say it with me, no more hell. Yep, that's what I want. Wow, I'm really good at this streaming thing, right? Yay! Anyway, so that's what we're doing today. Hopefully we're going to do a writing prompt with like no satanic anything in it. That's the goal. In fact, as long as today's writing prompt has nothing to do with Satan, I'm kind of happy. But on the other hand, I really do feel like the writing prompts that we've done so far ended up being pretty good. Like I'm really happy with the writing that we put in. Also, there's a YouTube channel associated with this as well. So let's go to youtube.com and then go up here to my channel here. And then, yeah, so yeah, I'm not the greatest at the thumbnail game. Like I understand I need to do better with thumbnails, but we do have the live VODs here. I tried my best. Please send help. And then also the 2 stories and like a little bit of ad lib from me in the start because I thought maybe people wanted to. Anyway, ultimately, really happy with how the project is going. I think it's turning out really well. It's just, you know, like I said multiple times before, when you start streaming for the first time, I understand. You understand. Everybody understands that like nobody watches. Well, except for you. I mean, thanks for being here. But like it's like, you know, it takes some time to get your footing and like, I don't know, just to kind of expand and like contract and whatever other spatial things happen to streams. Wow, I'm really good at this. Wow, I'm so good at this. Okay, so my goodness, I'm scattered today. That's okay. Let's keep going. So like I've done for the past couple streams, basically we just go through all the different writing prompts and we see which ones are good, which ones are bad, and then we pick one and we start writing. That's the whole thing. That's all we do. And I hope it's enjoyable. I hope that people like enjoy the process of kind of like expanding different stories and then writing the story and then reading it at the end. I think it's a really good project. And I think at the end of the day, it's got legs, but yeah, it's just a matter of kind of working through that initial cringe phase where I don't know what I'm doing at all. And that's exactly where we're at right now. Got a lot of stuff I'm working on. So that was a ramble, and I don't want to ramble anymore. So let's go ahead and start streaming, which I was doing. Yay. Okay. So I'm going to go to writing prompts over here. And actually today I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm going to make it bigger by doing this. So it's much easier to read. And then instead of like rewriting the writing prompts you'll see when we find a writing prompt that I like, I'm just going to take a screenshot of it and we're going to move all those over to a separate place to doodle on. Yep. Okay. So, writing prompt. Usually what I do when I go to writing prompts is I start by going to new. I've said this before, but when I go to new, basically the idea is if you go to like hot or rising or one of these types of sections on writing prompts, it's kind of unlikely that people are going to read what you write. But if you go to new, it's much more likely. So that's why I typically go to new. Let's just read through, see if there's any good writing prompts on new. If not, we'll go to rising and hot, and we'll find something. We're going to find something. I just don't know necessarily if it's going to be like, I don't know. We'll see. Again, like I said before, no more hell. Today, we're not going to talk about hell. No more hell. No more hell. Say it. Say. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, let's go. In this timeline, Freya who? In this timeline, Freya and her fellow I don't know what this is. I've never heard of these people. Who is this? In this timeline, Freya Wien and her fellow Valkyrie members. I don't know who this is, so let's move on. You are a transfer student who went from the realm of the elves to the realm of humans. Your parents told you the relative backwardness of humanity. Nevertheless, you wanted to have this experience and were truly amazed to see horseless carts, magic boxes used to communicate, and so on. Again, look, it's a very standard story, this one. I don't see too many ways to move this in a direction that's kind of fun and interesting to me, so I'm going to move on. Short prompt. I look down to my horror. It seems as though okay, nope, not going there. Sorry. I don't want to talk about that on this stream. Maybe other people on other streams will talk about that, but not here. We are strictly not going to talk about worm penises on this channel. That's where I'm drawing the line. No worm penises. Say it with me. No. No, 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 no. Let's keep going. Page 4, you're a PhD student, and every morning there's someone doing yoga outside your office window. Wow, that sounds like a romance story waiting to happen. Yep. Okay, you have two choices for living conditions. The first one is a slaughterhouse with rotating knife death traps everywhere. The second could collapse at any moment without warning. Choose. Come on, give me something. Let's start small. I wish you could make me a sandwich. The fool. And so the mortal is transformed into a sandwich. However, they still have two wishes left. What now? Well, they're a sandwich. They can't talk. I mean, I don't know who wrote this writing prompt, but there's like a general law of physics. And I don't know what the laws of physics are exactly. I think it's like, what happens to one person happens to another person. And like, there's this gravity thing. But I'm fairly certain the third law of physics is like, sandwiches can't speak. I'm pretty certain that's one of the laws of physics. Let's keep going. This is foolish. This is foolish. What am I saying? You stand vigil, waiting for your child. You have watched them weather the storm of their youth, watch them grapple with each exacting challenge that you set before them, and emerge victorious. Now, one of the final tests remain. You? What? Like, okay, so I'm sitting here. Let's say I'm a parent, right? And I'm basically, this entire prompt basically makes me a passive parent. Like I'm not helping my kid at all throughout any of their challenges in their life. Okay? I'm not doing anything. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting. They go through all of their challenges. They go through, their potty training phase. They go through their like elementary school phase. They go through their high school phase. Every time they have problems, like I don't know, like Samantha, for example, is bullying them, or like I don't know, like whatever it is. And then I'm waiting until they're 18. And then I slap them in the face. Man, I'm like the worst parent ever. No, we're not doing bad parenting here. You're a sidekick to an A-list superhero. After viewing their recent behavior, you decided it's time to leave. Maybe. Oh, okay, I can take this one. There's something here. I don't know what it is, but there's something here. So let me go ahead and copy this one. And we'll bring that over for later. Oops. Next, you moved out of the woods so you can practice your dark arts in peace. You also had a childhood dream of being the Wicked Witch in the forest. However, your curses always had ways of making people's lives better, so you constantly get people visiting you and ask for your help. Nah. I mean, so this is the problem when you go to new instead of like rising or something like that. You tend to get a lot of writing prompts that are not necessarily like the best, and especially at this time, it's kind of hard to find like really good writing prompts. So I think in new right now, the only one that I see that's like actually like compelling to me is this one about you're a sidekick to an A-list superhero. It's okay. I'm going to go through a couple more, and then we're going to go to Rising and Hot and see if there's any others there. I'd like to remind you that while God may forgive the avaricious, I will most certainly not. Stop coveting that which belongs to me, unless you'd like to see what I do to men of greed. Nah. When your mentor takes you as their student, you were required to forsake all biological ties. You agree since you were an orphan. It turns out you weren't. Now your biological family wanted you back. However, you didn't want to give up your apprenticeship or the happy life you have now. This could be a really nice story. It's just one of those that it leads the author a little bit too much and there's not as much room for creativity. But it is actually kind of interesting. I like this idea of like, a child who was accidentally left somewhere or something like this, and then has his or her whole life, like somewhere else. And then like, their family comes back, wants them back. It's a nice story. I just don't know. I don't know necessarily where I'd take it. So let's keep going. Let's go to Rising and see if there's any in Rising. Why don't you kill us? Why don't you kill us? Okay. I've got a no-kill rule. Yeah, I know, but the medical expenses sent Lenny into bankruptcy, and he ended up killing himself because of that. He had a kid, Okay. You're telling me that this deity, the very mad supreme being we're on a journey to defeat, you're saying that I've been their disconnected incarnation the entire time? Yes, child, you are indeed the prophesied prodigal avatar. You will slay your higher self and in the process save us all. Why is this Rising? You were a bartender until a portal dropped you into a world of magic. Now your cocktail skills blend potions like no one's ever seen, healing with a twist of lime, fireballs with a salted rim. You don't cast spells, you serve them. Your genie is really helpful. This one's not bad. Your genie is really helpful. It gives you extra wishes and always goes the extra mile, so each wish benefits society at large. It's really screwing with your plans for world domination. I could see this being a really good one. Let's go ahead and print screen and look at this one too. Okay, and the long-thought-dead queen returns, revealing herself to be a sorceress intent on taking over the kingdom. The princess, completely done putting up with the misogynistic society her father has kept going for all the time, gleefully joins her mother when offered the chance. Yeah, okay, I can see this being fun. I'll go ahead and put this one down as well. Okay, let's see if there's any others. When people get assigned a random playing card at birth to determine their future status, only a few thousand in the world get face cards and become royalty. You're the first person to ever get an ace? Nah. Your power is to instantly kill living organisms with a touch. You cannot turn it off, but you still want to fight. You have trained yourself in staff fighting and pushing people away. To make it clear that you want that to touch you is to die, but there is one person who's dead set on touching you. Okay, phrasing a bit. I kind of feel like there's, I don't necessarily want to write something about someone who's dead set on touching someone else. I feel like that's not necessarily the direction I want to take this channel. So let's keep going. Unfortunately, guys, there weren't so many writing prompts that I found particularly compelling today. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to take those two that we have, and then I'm going to kind of like sketch them out, see if there's anything that I find really nice, and then we'll go from there. So let me open up Zernal PP. Journal, paper background, plain, journal, paper color, black. I need to remember how to set up. In fact, let me just go ahead and do that. Setting up defaults for Zernal PP. Preferences. Enable or disable automatic saving and set the time interval in which that will be done. Defaults. Defaults. Zernal used to have a feature that would allow you to set the default paper, create a new document. Paper format, journal paper format isn't persistent. Journal, paper format. No, that's not what I'm looking for. Okay. Okay. Defaults. File. Edit. Preferences. Defaults. That's also not what I'm looking for. The relevant line in there appears to me like this. I really should have done this before stream, I think. Okay, I'll do this later. I don't remember how to do it. That's fine. We'll keep going. Okay, so let's go ahead and put down the prompts that we found. So let me go to pictures here and drop one prompt down here. Is that big enough for people to read? Maybe a little bit bigger. That seems fine to me. And then this one here. Move it up there, a little bit bigger. Something like that should be fine. And then I think there's one more here. And we'll move this over here. Something like that. Okay, so here are the three prompts that we pulled out. So 1, you're a sidekick to an A-list superhero. After viewing the recent behavior, you decided it's time to leave. 2, your genie is really helpful. It's giving you extra wishes and always goes the extra mile, so each wish benefits society at large. It's really screwing with your plans for world domination. And 3, the long-thought-dead queen returns, revealing herself to be a sorceress intent on taking over the kingdom. The princess, completely done putting up with the misogynistic society her father kept going for all that time, gleefully joins her mother when offered the chance. Okay, so of these, I gotta be honest, I'm not really feeling this last one. It's just, again, we didn't really have that many good options. So let me go ahead. I'm just gonna go ahead and put like a little, I don't know, like maybe a magenta question mark on this one, right? I don't see where this one will go. That's like interesting, but I'm willing to pursue it. And I know it's like kind of, you know, not every story has to like tell or like express something like towards the human condition. You know what I mean? Like it can just be a story for story's sake. And in some sense, I feel like I'm particularly bad at like telling stories just for story's sake. Like I'd like for the story to have an extra meaning. And so this could be an interesting challenge for me because it's something I need to work on, you know? Okay. So let's take a look at the superhero one. I'm going to go ahead and put this as A, and we're going to put this one as B. Let's look down here and let's see what we can do. So A, superhero. So one hand, this is great. It's not a story about hell. That's already a win in my book. Now let's kind of think about what the superhero could be, why it could be that, you know, you as the sidekick to the A-list superhero, why you are so like disillusioned to them. I do kind of like this idea that the superhero's power is like mind control or something. This is a story I tried to tell a few days ago, but I couldn't quite figure out. And so I ended up like, I tried to suss it out. I tried to work on it, but I couldn't. And so I think I need to just it's a story I still want to tell, but I can't quite figure out the best way to tell it, you know? And if the superhero's power is mind control, there could be like the situation where he was mind controlling his sidekick, you know? And by mind controlling his sidekick, that's how he got the sidekick to do everything. And suddenly the mind control stops working. That could be an interesting beat. I kind of like that one a lot. So mind control, use mind control on his sidekick, but the mind control is wearing off. I think very clearly this prompt wants the writer to go in the direction of like the superhero society being like kind of somehow like evil in a way. But I kind of feel like that trope of having an evil superhero society is like so common and done and overdone that I don't necessarily want to write that. But I feel like there has to be, it could be that there's a doppelganger or something. Like it could be that their power is like, diving into human subconsciouses. And the sidekick is now realizing that like by doing this, by jumping into people's subconscious minds and stuff like this and messing around, you're actually dramatically changing the way in which they live their life in the future. That could be it. You know, it could be that the sidekick actually goes to speak to, like, okay, I think this is a story, right? This is a pretty good story, okay? So here's what it is. So the superhero has the power to go into people's subconscious minds, right? Similar to mind control, but not exactly. And to defeat the evils within the mind, right? Like that's what the superhero is doing, right? So the sidekick was initially friends with a villain. The superhero defeated the villain. Okay, so the sidekick was initially friends with the villain. The superhero then defeated the villain, right? After the superhero defeated the villain, a few years pass. Then the sidekick goes to visit the villain and realizes they are a different person. Right? And so the idea here is that, like, due to the superhero's power, it actually dramatically changed this person so that they no longer exist. And the sidekick does not want to see their friend gone. You know, like he doesn't want to see, he still misses his friend, even though his friend did something wrong. He doesn't feel like his friend should have like completely changed and been a completely different person because of this, you know? So that, I think, is a pretty good story. Probably about the best that I could do from this plot line. Let's go ahead and explore the genie plotline as well. And again, I don't think we're going to do the long thought dead queen. There's something there, but it's just not, it doesn't feel fun to write to me right now. So let's keep going. Okay, so next we're going to look up the genie one. B, genie. Now, when I write genie stories, I usually like to, how do I put this? When I write genie stories, let me get some water. I usually like to spend a little bit of time like exploring the like the genie world and like why genies are allowed to like grant wishes and all this kind of stuff. And so the reason I found this one interesting is because one second. The reason I found this one interesting is because we could have this particular genie have like a rule, you know? So there is a rule that genies must follow, right? Because basically, like, the story of the genie is that, like, you know, it will grant a wish, but at a cost, right? And it could be that the genie is unconsciously following the rule. It could be that the genie is being a really nice person specifically to, like, disrupt this person who wants world domination. It could be that this genie is actually very friendly, you know, but there has to be some sort of, like, subversion of the rules because that's, like, inherent to genie society, you know? Like, that's what genies are. And that means that we have to find some set of rules that the genie needs to manipulate and work with. And so determining that set of rules, that guiding principle that allows for the genie to that allows for the genie to, creating that set of rules that allows for the genie to subvert the expectations of the wisher, the wish granter, such that the wisher, not the wish granter, such that they can modify the wishes for good. I think there's something there. But I think I'm really dead set on the superhero story. I think the superhero story is actually the better one here. Yeah, I think that's the better one here. Your genie is really helpful. It's giving you extra wishes and always goes the extra mile. So each wish benefits society at large. It's really screwing with your plans for world domination. I think part of the problem here is that, like, the only twist I can come up with for this one is that, like, you know, the guy's actually a bad person. Unless the guy is a good person. You know, the guy's a good person. And what they're doing is they are specifically wishing as if they're a bad person to trick the genie into tricking them into getting what they actually wanted. Maybe. I think it's okay. I think let's just go with the superhero story. I like the superhero story. I think it's interesting. Let's go back. Where are we? We were right in new. And this one. I think that's a good one. Let's go ahead and lock it in and go with it. So now let's start sketching out the story. So journal, new page before. Like I said before, there are three main characters in the story. There is person one. Well, okay. There are three main characters in the story. There's a superhero, right? Which we are going to put here. So here's the superhero. I guess they'll be doing the superhero pose like superheroes do. So something like that, I guess. I don't really know. Maybe they have a cape. Maybe they don't. I don't know. Anyway, they're superheroes. So here. This is what superheroes look like. Yay. Okay, so that's the superhero. And then there's two other people in the story. There's the villain, which I guess we'll draw in red over here. With little evil eyes because they're a villain. A little frowny face because they're a villain. And they'll be doing this with their hands on their hip because they're a villain. Okay, that just looks like a diamond. Hands on their hip. Okay, and then there's also the sidekick over here. And the sidekick is just standing there because he's a sidekick. Okay, perfect. Whoa. 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 So he's just standing over there as a sidekick. Wow. Surprised at everything. Okay, so we have these three characters, right? So initially, there has to be some sort of relationship between the sidekick. There has to be some sort of relationship between the sidekick and the villain. And obviously, there's a relationship between the sidekick and the hero. And the idea is that as the sidekick, you're exploring what the hero's power is and what they can do in order to basically change who this villain is, right? So here's the idea. The idea is that the hero has a power to delve into people's subconscious minds and modify them in some way, right? It's not very clear as to what that is going to be, but that is their power, right? So it's not quite mind control. What it does is it's more like a behavioral modification, right? And so the sidekick over here sees the superhero doing this and thinks he's doing a really good job and helps him throughout his life. He's constantly helping the superhero, but because he had this previous relationship with this particular villain right here, he decides one day, maybe years after they have saved this villain, they have, defeated this villain, he decides to visit in jail and see how this person's doing. And he realizes that this person is completely different than they used to be. It's not that the person has lost all of their negative attributes. It's that they lost not only their negative attributes, but the positive ones as well. Like different tics and mannerisms that made them and made them unique and made the sidekick like that person to begin with. And he has to slowly come to realize that the reason that happened was because of him, and in particular because of the superhero he was supporting. And I think that is not a bad story. I think that's a pretty good story. I'm a fan of that story. Okay, so now we have to kind of like sketch out how we're going to write this and what it's going to look like and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, I'm relatively happy with the direction the story will go, I think. So let's just start writing. Let me get some water. again, if you guys have any other comments, anything you want to say, feel free to let me know. And yeah, I'll totally address it as soon as I see it in chat. Outside of that, I think we're good to just start writing. Yeah? Yeah, I think we can. So let's go ahead and open up a new terminal over here. Big old terminal for big old people. I mean, like, you're not big, but, you know, I don't know where I'm going with that, so let's keep going. So we're going to CD into projects, scribbles, source, content, 2025, CD into April, and now we're going to go into vi2, ls, vi2.md. Okay, let's go ahead and write down the prompt, just so we have that all ready to go. Okay, you're a sidekick to an A-list superhero. After viewing the recent behavior, you decided it's time to leave. Oops, 1 second. Okay, let's go ahead and put in the text as well. Okay, I think this is a good prompt. I'm relatively happy with this, where the story's going to go. So, I just feel like, I don't know, like, I feel like as a title, All That Glitters is a pretty good title. I know it's probably an overused trope. That's fine. It's okay. Again, this is a writing prompt. It's more like writing practice so that we can just, I don't know, like, enjoy writing stories together, or like, I don't know. It's writing practice. That's what it is. It's writing practice. It's okay if we're using some tropes. That's fine. It's not a big deal. Okay, so now we have to think about, like, what it is that we're trying to evoke with this particular story. I always like to have some sort of general theme. And so are the themes that we're looking at here. I think All That Glitters is a pretty good theme here, right? Like, all that glitters isn't gold, right? That's the phrase. And so when it comes to themes, I think what we're looking for is, like, the feeling of disillusionment. And I think there's like a really nice interplay, because probably the superhero's name could be Master of Illusions or something, right? And like the fact that we're talking about disillusionment and illusions, there's something here, like there's a play on words that we could do, like low-hanging fruit, you know? This person has to have a like deep gut-wrenching realization that what they're doing is actually not good, right? They have to realize that everything that they've been led to believe for the past 10 years or 15 years or however long they've been working for this person, everything that they have done actually leads them down the wrong path, not the right path, you know? So with that said, we have to kind of like, we really have to play up this relationship between the person and the villain. Unfortunately, and I know this is kind of a bit, that was kind of the story I told yesterday. Like, it was about like the Grim Reaper and how he had a friend and how he found the friend again. It is kind of a similar like Naruto Sasuke type of situation going on here. But I hope people aren't upset. I don't like the fact that like every story seems to have like carry similar things from the day before. But on the other hand, like that is kind of the problem with like our writing prompts on Reddit. Like a lot of times the writing prompts are very much similar to the other writing prompts that exist. So you kind of tell very similar stories, which isn't great. But again, as writing practice, I think it's okay. Okay. So Master of Illusions could be the name of the superhero. I think, honestly, we have the story. Let's just start writing this out. I was never a popular kid when I grew up. I was never a popular kid when I grew up. So, that's it. That's the story, okay? So the story is that the person who turned into a villain was actually like their hero when they were younger, right? Like that, I think, is the story beat. And so the question is, like, 1 second, I need to think about it again. The question is, what is true, right? Their experiences when they were younger, or, okay, so let's just write this down. So the sidekick has 2 heroes. One when they were young, this person turns into a villain. And 2, when they were an adult. And this one is a villain in disguise. Right? And so the question is like, like, we have, there has to be some sort of like foil thing going on between these two characters. Yeah, okay. Just go and start writing. So, I was never a popular kid when I grew up. It's not that I was bullied. Exactly. It's not that I was bullied exactly. I just never knew how to interact with children my age. I always felt there was some disconnect. Again, this is very real. Like, it's very, like, it should be that almost everybody has the experience of like not being able to connect with other people. So in a sense, it is an attempt at being emotionally gripping. But again, the story's about superheroes, and I feel like we kind of want to have more of like a physical, like it needs to be more of like, I think we should start in the fight. Like it should be in media res, right? And because the superhero's power is delving into people's subconsciouses anyway, I think the story should be them actually fighting in the subconscious of the villain, and showing that that villain actually does very much care for the sidekick. I think that's it. I think that's where we start. So that's not bad. That's a good beat. So what do we do? What do we do? There was a tree. Like, I'm thinking about like drawing a picture here. So like there's a school and there's a tree with a swing on it. I mean, look, that is genuinely Naruto situation there. So I don't know if we should go there. Let's see. There was the building of our school was old. With hallways that led to nowhere due to boarded up classrooms and due to a lack of staff. The building of our school was old with hallways. No, so right. So what I'm trying to say here is that the sidekick was able to defeat the villain due to their unique experience with the villain himself. That's number 1. The villain has to say something at the end of the battle. Says something at the end of the battle that sticks with the sidekick. That's number 2. 3. The sidekick goes back to the villain and realizes they are a different person. And so there has to be some sort of like tick, like some sort of like very unique tell that like the villain is their childhood friend. You know what I mean? Like some sort of like weird, like something that the villain does that reminds the sidekick of the villain, you know? Like, so there has to be like there has to be something that we foreshadow as a way to tell that the villain is no longer who they once was. So, okay. There are 17 steps between the floors in my old school. There's a closet I used to hide. There's a room in the top. There's a room on the top floor in the attic that was never used by anyone except the two of us. We had a little club about nothing. Okay, I think this is it. Okay, so there are 17 steps between the floors in my old school. There's a room in the attic that was never used by anyone except the two of us. The 17 steps isn't super necessary here, but I think the point is that I'm trying to, like, tell the story that this person not only knows the villain very deeply, but also knows, like, the school, the surrounding area, the subconscious that this person is projecting that the superhero is jumping into. That is the story, right? The story is that this person, the subconscious of the villain that they're fighting, right, happens to be in this club room that they used to be in, right? And so it is supposed to portray the fact that the villain actually very much deeply respects the sidekick, and, like, still thinks of him, even though, like, they've gone different ways and in different paths in life. So let's keep going. There's something here. It's gonna be a good story. I think it's gonna be a good story. There was a window in the attic of our old school. It wasn't. No, I'm trying to think, like, I'm trying to draw a particular picture of, like, there being a window, and, like, that's where there was, like, a particular seat that this person always used to sit in. And now when he goes up into the attic now, and he looks into that room, it's not his friend, but the villain, who's a completely different person. There's something here, again, working on it. Sometimes takes some time to really get that thought out. I've said this before on the past couple streams, and I do genuinely mean it. Like, in my mind, there are people who can just write, and that's fine. Some people do just write. But for me, I feel like the act of revision is a key and integral part of writing. And if you don't go through this process of constantly trying and failing to start, or, like, constantly trying and rewriting everything that you've done, I feel like maybe you're not, or maybe I'm not picking a story that is challenging enough for me to write, you know? My hope is that no matter how good of an author I become, like how good of a writer I become, I'll always have this process of trying and failing again, so that I can basically keep, like, improving as an author, you know? Like, if you don't find yourself feeling challenged by what you're writing, you're not improving, you know? And so that's okay. It's fine that you try to find little ways in which you can improve yourself with the little things that you do every day. And that's kind of what we're doing here. So again, it's just a process, and we'll get through the process together. And that's kind of the reason I'm here. So all that glitters, let's go. There has to be like a... Okay, come on. How do I do this? I have to explain. There was a room. There's a room in our old school. There's a room in our old school that only the two of us knew. It was in the attic. It was in the attic. Okay, come on. There are places. Sometimes there are places that will always remain special to me. There are certain places that no matter how old, how far I go, I leave from certain places. Again, I'm trying to evoke the feeling that this place is special, but I don't want to say it exactly, and so I want to move away from that. So found myself running through the hallways of my old school. I opened door after door, looking for someone I didn't know. At least, I didn't know anymore. He had changed. I don't know when. Maybe I had changed as well. I was no longer the little child. I was no longer the little child stalking. I was no longer the little kid. Little child. I was no longer the little child, dependent on everyone around me. I was no longer dependent on him either. Okay, this actually isn't a bad start. So I found myself running through the hallways of my old school. I opened door after door looking for someone I didn't know, at least someone I didn't know anymore. He had changed. Maybe I'd changed as well. I was no longer the little child dependent on everyone around me. I was no longer dependent on him either. Good. That is a good start. I think this is where we want to go. The two of us. The two of us had changed. No. I already said changed. I knew he was here. He had to be. Okay, so there has to be some like weird... I found myself running through the hallways of my old school. I opened door after door looking for someone I didn't know. At least I didn't know anymore. He had changed. Maybe I had changed as well. I was no longer the little child dependent on everyone around me. I was no longer dependent on him either. Okay, so frantically. I searched frantically. I searched frantically through... I opened door after door looking for someone I didn't know. At some point, exhausted, I found myself running through the hallways of my old school. I opened door after door looking for someone I didn't know. At least I didn't know anymore. He had changed. Maybe I had changed as well. I was no longer the little child dependent on everyone around me. I was no longer dependent on him either. At some point, after what felt like hours of exhaustive searching, I slumped into the hallway. I slumped into the wall. Onto the wall. In the hallway. Next to my old locker. I don't know why. But I heard something at that time. A voice from my old friend asking if I wanted to hang out that afternoon. Okay, we're getting somewhere. At some point after what felt like hours of exhausted searching, I slumped onto the wall in the hallway next to my old locker. I don't know why, but I heard something at that time. A voice from my old friend asking if I wanted to hang out that afternoon. I knew immediately where to go and what to do. I think I need like this, an M dash in here. I then knew immediately. I walked up the steps to the attic. Oh, no, what is it? I took a breath. And and slowly made my way to the old chemistry lab, where there was a small hatch leading to a storage space, an attic, to an attic. Okay, so I took a breath and slowly made my way to the old chemistry lab, where there was a small hatch leading to an attic, leading to a storage space, an attic leading to an attic space we used to use as a unofficial club room. The teachers all knew about it, but it was still our little, but it still felt our secret, a hideaway from the rest of the world. We would spend hours there every day. We would spend hours there every day. Oh, I got it. In jail, the villain asks, "Who are you?" To the... Oh, that's going to be a good beat. In jail, the villain asks, "Who are you?" To the sidekick. This causes him to spiral and realize what he had done. Ooh, that's going to be a good beat. Okay, so I took a breath and slowly made my way to the old chemistry lab, where there was a small hatch leading to the attic space we used to use as an unofficial clubroom. The teachers all knew about it, but it still felt like our secret. Like our own secret. It still felt like our own little secret, a hideaway from the rest of the world. We would spend hours there every day, just being kids. Maybe playing games. Maybe throwing rocks off the roof. Maybe just chatting. There was always so much to talk about. There's always so much to talk about when your imagination is young. I don't like that sentence, but we'll come back to it. So I found myself running through the hallways of my old school. I opened door after door looking for someone I didn't know. At least I didn't know anymore. He had changed. Maybe I had changed as well. I was no longer the little child dependent on everyone around me. I was no longer dependent on him either. At some point, after what felt like hours of exhaustive searching, I slumped onto the wall in the hallway next to my old locker. I don't know why, but I heard something at that time. A voice from my old friend asking if I wanted to hang out that afternoon. I then knew immediately where to go and what to do. I took a breath and slowly made my way to the old chemistry lab, where there was a small hatch leading to an attic space we used to use as an unofficial clubroom. The teachers all knew about it, but it still felt like our own little secret, a hideaway from the rest of the world, where we would spend hours every day just being kids, maybe playing games, maybe throwing rocks off the roof, maybe just chatting. There's always so much to talk about when your imagination is wild. No, when your imagination is your guide, is when you allow your imagination to be your guide, to run freely. That's not bad. It's okay. We'll get through it. Somehow, I felt my heart beating through my chest. I couldn't quite place the emotions I was feeling in that moment. I placed my hand on the hatch, on the doorknob, and paused for a second. I couldn't quite place the emotions I was feeling at that moment, but I felt my heart beating through my chest. Why? 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 Why would he be there after all this time? Why would he come back? He left me. Right? This is a bit too much, but it's okay. We'll keep going. It's okay to play to the emotional beats. It's fine. I placed my hand on the doorknob and paused for a brief second. I couldn't quite place the emotions I was feeling in that moment, but I felt my heart beating through my chest. Why would he be there? Why would he be here after all this time? Why would he come back? I changed. I was older. I had a job to do. I opened the door and saw a little child on the chair next to the window. Jet black hair. That was a little too ruffled. Green eyes. And a book in his hand. He looked at me and said, I was waiting. That's pretty good. Okay, I like this. So I opened the door and saw a little child sitting in the chair next to the window. Jet black hair that was a little too ruffled, green eyes, and a book in his hand. Oops, I'm having some trouble formatting this. Give me a second. Okay, I opened the door and saw a little child sitting in the chair next to the window. Jet black hair that was a little too ruffled, green eyes, and a book in his hand. He looked at me and said, I was waiting for you to come. In that moment, I heard someone rushing behind me. A familiar set of footsteps with a familiar voice. So here what I wanted to have is a superhero like barge in and like completely destroy the scene, and to have his friend, you know, the kid with the jet black hair, to change into the supervillain that he was, and then for them to be ejected from the subconscious, and for them to have won the battle. Like, that's what I'm looking for here. So I opened the door and saw a little child sitting in the chair next to the window, jet black hair that was a little too, maybe just with jet black hair. In that moment, I heard someone rushing behind me, a familiar set of footsteps with a familiar voice. A familiar set of footsteps, a familiar carrying a familiar figure through the doorway. A familiar set of footsteps carrying a familiar figure through the doorway. He was wearing a bright red cape with blue spandex? Is that what superheroes wear? Spandex? With a blue suit? I don't want to say spandex. With a blue suit that vaguely matched. He shouted. He laughed. He boldly laughed. And said, Buddy. Buddy! I knew you could do it. Do you think he was hiding away? At your old school. What a good find. I then looked to the kid sitting next to the window. He had transformed. He transformed into someone else entirely. He's now wearing and was now wearing a purple trench coat with glasses and a mask. I then looked at the kid sitting next to the window. He had transformed into someone else entirely, and was now wearing a purple trench coat with glasses and a mask obscuring his face. The man, wearing the purple, it was, okay, a familiar set of footsteps carrying a familiar figure through the doorway. He was wearing a bright red cape. It was Dr. Illusion, the hero, here to save the day. He boldly laughed and said, "Buddy, I knew you could do it. To think he was hiding away at your old school? What a good find." I then looked at this kid sitting next to the window. He had transformed into someone else entirely and was now wearing a purple trench coat with glasses and a mask obscuring his face. The man said nothing. I can give this guy a name, but I don't know if I should. The man said nothing. He just continued to read his book next to the window. Dr. Illusion then heroically, I already said heroically, so then pranced, walked, jaunted, placed a hand on, I need to get this guy a name. The man said nothing. It was, so Dr. Illusion and then Mr. Pink. Plural. Plural? Mr. Mr. I'm not very good at naming. Mr. Plum. The villain, currently terrorizing the town. That needed to be stopped. And I think, okay, again, I'm doing this thing where like I initially write the prompt as if it was like a masculine person presenting the information, but like I'm starting to realize that this sidekick is probably also a female, so probably I should change his buddy here to be like Samantha or like like some like superhero name like Miss Credible. Let's see, there's like Kim Possible, Ron Stopple, Miss Credible, Miss Mystique, Miss Mystery. Mystery's fine. Mystery. That's fine. I knew you could do it. To think that he was hiding at your old school? What a good find. I then looked at the kid sitting next to the window. He transformed into someone else entirely and was now wearing a purple trench coat with glasses and mask obscuring his face. It was Mr. Plum, the villain currently terrorizing the town that needed to be stopped. The man said nothing. Mr. Plum said nothing. Mr. Plum said nothing. He just continued to read his book next to the window. Dr. Illusion placed a hand on the villain and said, "You are coming with me." In that moment, I blinked and the world changed. I was no longer in the school with my old friend. We were back to reality where Dr. Illusion was handcuffing Mr. Plum and bringing him into and carrying him and pulling him, pushing him into a police car. Okay? In that moment, I blinked and the world changed. I was no longer in the school with my old friend. We were back to reality where Dr. Illusion was handcuffing Mr. Plum and pushing him into a police car. Dr. Illusion has the power to dive into the subconscious minds of anyone. Dr. Illusion has the power to dive into the subconscious minds of anyone. And I, as his sidekick, can come along for the ride. Oops. We've been on many adventures before, and certainly plan to go on many adventures more. Okay? But what happened next stuck to me. Mr. Plum, my friend, looked at me and said, "Where am I?" That's not quite gonna work. Like the whole beat here is that like Mr. Plum has completely forgotten Miss Terry, right? Like that's what happened here. So the hope here is that we're portraying this. Like the hope here is that we are able to portray the fact that Mr. Plum has completely forgotten about his good friend that he has had for like his entire life, you know? So he has to say something that's somewhat innocuous, like that she doesn't fully understand like the full implications of what has happened. And so she has to come again and ask one more time. Away from Dr. Illusion, right? So, but what happened next stuck with me. For a long time. Mr. Plum, my old friend, looked to me and said, "I'll get you next time." Dr. Illusion and Miss Terry. On its surface, this should have been, this should have sounded normal. It's what villains say to superheroes. Heroes, when they are apprehended. But this wasn't any villain. It was my friend. The person I had spent so much time with in the attic. The person who I relied on for emotion support. This wasn't any villain. It was my friend, the person who I'd spent so much time with in the attic, the person who I relied on for emotion support. The person I shared all my books and hobbies with. So I have to like name the book, I think. Maybe play games. Let's see. I laughed and said, No. I knew the book. It was The Adventures of... What's a good name here? The Adventures of... Pony Boy. The Adventures of Pony Boy and Robin. It was The Adventures of Pony Boy and Robin, a book. More importantly, it was my copy. He looked at me and said, I was waiting for you to come. But this wasn't any villain. It was my friend, the person I spent so much time with in the attic. The person who I relied on for emotional support. The person I shared all my books with, books and hobbies with. He looked to me. He looked at me as if he had no idea who I was. I tried to shrug it off and act like it didn't matter. But it did. No matter how much time passed, I couldn't forget the way he looked at me that day. So, a few months later, so a year later, I visited him in jail, in the detention center. We spoke, separated by a thick glass window, which somehow felt fitting for the situation at hand. I came as me, not mystery. Me. He came as him. He wasn't allowed. He wasn't allowed to wear his supervillain in prison. So we spoke, separated by a thick glass window, which somehow felt fitting for the situation at hand. I came as me, not Miss Derry, me. He came as him. He wasn't allowed to wear his supervillain garb in prison. I think it's okay to leave that in the next sentence. I asked him about his life, about what happened after school, about why he became a villain. One second. About everything, anything I could think of. He always gave vague responses. Completely different than the kid I used to know. There was no fire in his eyes. No reason to live. It's too much. There's no fire in his eyes. He always gave vague responses, completely different than the kid I used to know. He always gave vague responses, completely different than the kid I used to know. There's no fire in his eyes. near the end of the conversation, I said to him, I said, I know it's been a long time, but I really appreciate it. I really appreciate being able to speak with you like this again. He then looked at me, looked directly at me, and asked, "Who are you?" It was then that I realized something that I had been missing until now. Dr. Illusion doesn't just dive into the memories, the subconscious of the villains he is fighting. He actually steals, directly attacks their brain, and steals core memories. That day, when we fought Mr. Plum, we had stolen from him core memories. It was then that I realized something that I had been missing until now. Dr. Illusion doesn't just dive into the subconscious of the villains he's fighting. He actually directly attacks their brain and steals their core memories. That day when we fought Mr. Plum, we had stolen something. We had stolen something dear from him, core memories from his youth. In particular, all the memories related to the attic and related to me. So it was then that I realized something that I had been missing until now. Dr. Illusion doesn't just dive into the subconscious of villains he's fighting, he actually directly attacks their brain. That day when we fought Mr. Plum, we had stolen something dear from him, core memories of his youth. In particular, all the memories related to the attic and related to me. It wasn't just that we had drifted apart. I had stolen myself from him. Okay, that's a weird beat. I'm gonna read through it. I need to figure out how to finish up this last line. It's not there yet, but it's close. This is really close. I quite like this. Okay, so let's read through it. So all that glitters. I found myself running through the hallways of my old school. I opened door after door looking for someone I didn't know. At least I didn't know anymore. He had changed. Maybe I had changed as well. I was no longer the little child dependent on everyone around me. I was no longer dependent on him either. At some point, after what felt like hours of exhaustive searching, I slumped onto the wall in the hallway next to my old locker. I don't know why, but I heard something at that time. A voice from my old friend asking if I wanted to hang out that afternoon. I then knew immediately where to go and what to do. I took a breath and slowly made my way to the old chemistry lab, where there was a small hatch leading to an attic space we used to use as an unofficial club room. The teachers all knew about it, but it still felt like our own little secret, a hideaway from the rest of the world. We would spend hours every day just being kids, maybe playing games, throwing rocks off the roof, maybe just chatting. There's always so much to talk about when you allow your imagination to run freely. I placed my hand on the doorknob and paused for a brief second. I couldn't quite place my emotions, but I couldn't quite place the emotions I was feeling in that moment, but I felt my heart beating through my chest. Why would he be here after all this time? Why would he come back? He left me, right? I had changed. I was older. I had a job to do. I opened the door and saw a little child sitting on the chair next to the window with jet black hair. He had jet black hair He had jet black hair that was a little too ruffled, green eyes, and a book in his hand. I knew the book. It was The Adventures of Ponyboy and Robin. More importantly, it was my copy. He looked at me and said, I was waiting for you to come. In that moment, I heard someone rushing behind me, a familiar set of footsteps carrying a familiar figure through the doorway. He was wearing a bright red cape with a blue suit that vaguely matched. It was Dr. Illusion, the hero here to save the day. He boldly laughed and said, Miss Derry, I knew you could do it. To think he was hiding away at your old school? What a good find. I then looked to the kid sitting next to the window. He had transformed into someone entirely different and was now wearing a purple trench coat with glasses and a mask obscuring his face. It was Mr. Plum, the villain currently terrorizing the town that needed to be stopped. Mr. Plum said nothing. He just continued to read his book next to the window. He just continued reading my book next to the window. Dr. Illusion then placed a hand on the villain and said, You're coming with me. In that moment, I blinked and the world changed. I was no longer in the school with my old friend. We were back to reality where Dr. Illusion was handcuffing Mr. Plum and pushing him into a police car. Dr. Illusion has the power to dive into the subconscious minds of anyone, and I, as his sidekick, can come along for the ride. We've been on many adventures before, and certainly plan to go on many more. 1 second. But what happened next stuck with me for a long time. Mr. Plum, my old friend, looked at me and said, I'll get you next time, Dr. Illusion and Miss Terry. On its surface, this should have sounded normal. It's what villains say to superheroes when they're apprehended. But this wasn't any supervillain. This wasn't just any supervillain. Just any supervillain. It was my friend. The person I'd spent so much time with in the attic. The person who I relied on for emotional support. The person I shared all my books and hobbies with. Supervillage. He then looked at me as if he had no idea who I was. He looked at me as if he had no idea who I was. I tried to shrug it off and act like it didn't matter, but it did. No matter how much time had passed, I couldn't forget the way he looked at me that day. So a year later, I visited him in the detention center. We spoke, separated by a thick glass window, which somehow felt fitting for the situation at hand. I came as me, not Miss Derry, me. He came as him. He wasn't allowed to wear his supervillain garb in prison. I asked him about his life, about what happened after school, about why he became a villain, about anything I could think of. He always gave me vague responses, completely different than the kid I used to know. Near the end of the conversation, I said, I know it's been a long time, but I appreciate being able to speak with you again like this. Speak with you like this again. He then looked directly at me and asked, Who are you? It was then that I realized something that I had been missing until now. Dr. Illusion doesn't just dive into the subconscious of villains he's fighting, he actually directly attacks their brain. That day when we fought Mr. Plum, we had stolen something dear from him, core memories of his youth. In particular, all memories related to the attic and related to me. It wasn't just that we drifted apart. I'd stolen myself from him. Maybe that's where I end it. I don't like that last line, but I think it's okay given the situation at hand. So I think that's where I end it. So let me go back to look at what the prompt was. 1 second. So the prompt was your sidekick to an A-list superhero. After viewing the recent behavior, you decide it's time to leave. I think that's enough to say it's time to go. I think that's fine. So let me go ahead and write quit here, and we're going to turn this into a video and go. Again, guys, I do really appreciate you guys being here. I like anyone who happened to be here chatting. T.S. Joss, hey, thanks for being here. So let me go into CD back. Oh, actually, first let me do an A spell. A spell -C 2.md. Club room, sure, 1. Doorknob, 1. Pony boy, doesn't matter, ignore. Familiar, misspelled. Trenchcoat, 1. Villain, 1. Villain, 1. I misspelled villain every single time. Sidekick, 1. Villains, again, I keep misspelling villain, 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 villain. I misspelled villain every single time. Villain, wasn't perfect. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is CD back a couple directories here. CD back one more, CD one more, CD into scripts. And then we're going to do convert to video. Back into source content. Source content 2025 April 2.md. Give that a second to convert to video. And while that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and get up the sound visualizer as well. Yep. Nope. That one. Okay, looks like it's working. And now I just have to put it on OBS. Here? Nope. I don't know why it does that. That's okay. Okay. Now it should work. Show and tell. Okay, so we got the sound visualizer. Give it a second. Again, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, anything like that, feel free to let me know. I'm going to get some water. It looks like we got the story written. We're going to read through it. Hopefully it's good. I think it's good. And then that's probably going to be the end of stream. So if you guys have anything else you want to talk about, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, we'll be done for the day. Oh no. This is taking a little bit of time to render, I guess just because it's a long story. So give it a second. GGWP, GG, good game. WP is for where we writing prompt. GGWP, yay. Okay, so it's done. Let me go ahead and open up the video. Here we go. MPV final.mp4. Move it over here. Make it a little smaller. Okay, looks like we're ready to go. Up here. Oh, actually, what's going on here? Okay, apparently I need to work on the script a little bit. That's okay. Okay. I did just realize there's a little bit of a typo that I need to fix, but that's okay. We'll get through it. Again, this is the writing prompt that we did today. It's called All That Glitters. Let me move it up a little bit. I hope it scrolls at the right pace. You made a LaTeX to MP4. No, so it goes from Markdown to LaTeX to image. No, Markdown to LaTeX to PDF to PNG. And then it scrolls to MP4. So that's what we're doing. It's kind of a really annoying script, but I did it and here we are. Okay, so this is a story that we wrote today. It's called All That Glitters. We're going to start reading it in, is there a voiceover too? Well, I mean, I'm the voiceover. Yeah. Okay, so it's called All That Glitters, and we're going to start reading in 3, 2, 1. Oh, actually, wait, I got to turn the music off in the background. Okay, now we're going to start reading in 3, 2, 1. All That Glitters. I found myself running through the hallways of my old school. I opened door after door looking for someone I didn't know. Okay, let me try that one more time. Sorry, it's right at the start. Okay, one more time. Sorry. Okay, one more time. I got it. One more time. Okay. All That Glitters. I found myself running through the hallways of my old school. I opened door after door looking for someone I didn't know. At least I didn't know anymore. He had changed. Maybe I had changed as well. I was no longer the little child dependent on everyone around me. I was no longer dependent on him either. At some point, after what felt like hours of exhaustive searching, I slumped into the wall in the hallway next to my old locker. I don't know why, but I heard something at that time, a voice from my old friend asking if I wanted to hang out that afternoon. I then knew immediately where to go and what to do. I took a breath and slowly made my way to the old chemistry lab, where there was a small hatch leading to the attic. Where there was a small hatch leading to an attic space we used to use as an unofficial clubroom. The teachers all knew about it, but it still felt like our own little secret, a hideaway from the rest of the world. We would spend hours there every day, just being kids, maybe playing games, maybe throwing rocks off the roof, maybe just chatting. There's always so much to talk about when you allow your imagination to run freely. I put my hand on the doorknob and paused for a brief second. And I'm having some trouble reading. Give me a second. I put my hand on the doorknob and paused for a brief second. I couldn't quite place the emotions I was feeling in that moment, but I felt my heart beating through my chest. Why would he be here after all this time? Why would he come back? He left me, right? I had changed. I was older. I had a job to do. I opened the door and saw a little child sitting on the chair next to the window. He had jet black hair that was a little too ruffled, green eyes, and a book in his hand. I knew the book. It was The Adventures of Ponyboy and Robin. More importantly, it was my copy. He looked at me and said, I was waiting for you to come. In that moment, I heard someone rushing behind me. A familiar set of footsteps carrying a familiar figure through the doorway. I'm really struggling with this line. A familiar set of footsteps carrying a familiar figure through the doorway. He was wearing a bright red cape with a blue suit that vaguely matched. It was Dr. Illusion, the hero here to save the day. He boldly laughed and said, Miss Derry, I knew you could do it. To think he was hiding away at your old school. What a good find. I then looked to the kid sitting next to the window. He had transformed into someone else entirely. and was now wearing a purple trench coat with glasses and a mask obscuring his face. It was Mr. Plum, the villain currently terrorizing the town that needed to be stopped. Mr. Plum said nothing. He just continued reading my book next to the window. Dr. Illusion then placed a hand on the villain and said, "You're coming with me." In that moment, I blinked, and the world changed. I was no longer in the school with my old friend. We were back to reality where Dr. Illusion was handcuffing Mr. Plum and pushing him into a police car. Dr. Illusion has the power to dive into the subconscious minds of anyone, and I, as his sidekick, can come along for the ride. We've been on many adventures before and certainly plan to go on many more. But what happened next stuck with me for a long time. Mr. Plum, my old friend, looked at me and said, "I'll get you next time, Dr. Illusion and Miss Terry." On its surface, this should have sounded somewhat normal. It's what villains say to superheroes when they're apprehended. But this wasn't just any villain. It was my friend, the person I'd spent so much time with in the attic, the person who I relied on for emotional support, the person I shared all my books and hobbies with. He looked at me as if he had no idea who I was. I tried to shrug it off and act like it didn't matter, but it did. No matter how much time passed, I couldn't forget the way he looked at me that day. So, a year later, I visited him in the detention center. We spoke, separated by a thick glass window, which somehow felt fitting given the situation at hand. I came as me, not Miss Terry, me. He came as him. He wasn't allowed to wear his supervillain garb in prison. I asked him about his life, about what happened after school, about why he became a villain, about anything I could think of. He always gave me vague responses, completely different than the kid I used to know. Near the end of the conversation, I said, "I know it's been a long time, but I appreciate being able to speak with you like this again." He then looked directly at me and asked, "Who are you?" It was then that I realized something that I had been missing until now. Dr. Illusion doesn't just dive into the subconscious of the villains he's fighting. He actually directly attacks their brain. That day when we fought Mr. Plum, we had stolen something dear from him, core memories from his youth. In particular, all the memories related to the attic and related to me. It wasn't just that we had drifted apart. I had stolen myself from him. The prompt was, "You're a sidekick to an A-list superhero. After viewing the recent behavior, you decided it's time to leave." So that, I think, hey, that was actually pretty good. So there's a couple things I need to do. Number one, again, I really need to update the script because like the scrolling speed was all messed up and there's a lot of different things I need to work on. So in particular, the way the script works is it basically outputs the markdown to PDF, counts the number of PDF pages, and then it figures out how much space it needs to combine them all into one big long PDF so it can create one big long PNG and then scroll through it. And I think that process leads to a large amount of like extra white space on the top and bottom that we have to get rid of. That's something I got to figure out, but that's okay. Overall, I think the story is pretty good. Like I'm really actually quite happy with how this turned out. So I'm going to go ahead and post this on Reddit. There was a typo I saw. Let me see, where was it? It was, Dr. Illusion doesn't just dive into the subconscious of the villains he is fighting. I've forgotten is there. So let's go here. CD back into source, content, 2025, April, vi2.md, G, doesn't just dive into the subconscious of the villains he is fighting. He actually directly attacks their brain. Okay, that should be good. Let me go up to the top as well and change that as well. It's a very like, the title is not great. I understand the title's not great. That's okay. I'll work on that later. In fact, maybe we change the title now. It's okay. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Let's just leave it as all that glitters. It's fine. Okay, write this. And we're going to open this up in LibreOffice. And 2.md. Okay. I don't care. I just have to make sure that the formatting is correct. I'm going to copy this and put this into the Reddit. Okay, that looks good to me. We're going to paste this, paste it there. I guess I have to copy, Control C and Control V, and then save that. Oh, and I forgot to do one thing, which is to let everyone know that this comes from Amphimancer. So let's edit this, go down to the bottom. And then I need amphimancer.com. There we go. Okay, save that. Also, let me just make sure the formatting turned out right. You're coming with me. I had a job to do. Okay, yep, this seems fine to me. Okay, so overall, I'm relatively happy with how the prompt turned out. I quite like it. I think it turned out really well. Also, I'm really glad that we don't have to talk about hell today. Again, no more hell, no more hell, no more hell. Great. Okay, really happy with that. As far as the stream is concerned, today was, I think, hit or miss. I know that the voice is still like, I'm working on the voice a lot. It's not quite there yet. I'm kind of like sick and it's not really like coming out the way I want it to come out. That's okay. I think in like a week or two, I'll get better and the voice will get better and we'll go from there. You do have a voice. Yes, I do. I think everybody does. Most people do, but mine sucks. But yeah, so we'll see how it goes. Again, I'm going to edit another video and put it out on YouTube. I have been putting videos out on YouTube for the past couple of days, not only the live stream, but also like different videos as well. If you guys enjoyed the content, just let me know. You can, either let me know here on Twitch or on YouTube or whatever. Overall, really relatively happy with how things are going. Let me go ahead and commit this to GitHub, and then we're good to go. So you git add 2.mz, cd back, vi make.jl, yank and paste. Change this to 2, and then we want to change this to all that glitters. Okay, I think that's okay. Yep, I think that's okay. Right, quit. Let's do a quick make. Julia make.jl. Oh, double dash project. Project. Okay. And let me double check. Firefox. 1 second. It is taking its time, isn't it? Nope. Okay, let's try that again. Firefox build content index.html. What content? Oh, build index. There we go. Okay, looks good. Let's go here and then go to April and all that glitters. Index.html looks good to me. So we can go ahead and commit that and we'll be good for the day. Again, if you guys have anything else you want to talk about, feel free to let me know. Git status, git add make.jl, git status, git status, git commit -m, adding a new story, git push, origin main. Okay, that looks good to me. Thank you guys so much for coming in. Have a wonderful day, night, afternoon, morning, evening, whatever time it happens to be your time. And I'll see you guys around next time for the next episode of Amphimancer, where we do more writing. Again, I'm really, really enjoying these streams so far. I know it's cringy. I'm working on it. I'm working through the cringe. Like I said, like the first like week or two when you make content, like you do streaming and stuff like this, like basically you're not streaming it to anyone except for TS Joss. Thank you so much for being here. And like it's kind of just, working through the cringe, and that's we're in the working through the cringe phase right now. But on the other hand, I think the stories we've written are pretty good. I mean, to be honest, they're like a little too emotional for me. I need to do a little better job of like, caging those emotions in and not expressing them so much in writing. Like I need to do like a fun prompt or something, which is why I probably should have done the misogynistic prompt, but I didn't want to do a misogynistic prompt because it's not, I don't know. I don't want to talk about that. I'm very, very jealous of being able to write like this. Hey, I'm happy that, I mean, if you want, I'm happy you said that. I really appreciate the, the feedback there, again, I'm doing the best I can, and I'm hoping that in the next few weeks or something, like we start to get a rhythm, and I think we will get a rhythm. I actually really, really like these streams. And I appreciate you guys being here. So, thank you guys so much for coming in, and I'll see you next time. First, I gotta say bye-bye to YouTube. So bye-bye, YouTube. Bye-bye.